Hello, friends. My name is Evan Moffick. I am a rabbi. That's right. I lead a Jewish community in the big city of Chicago. Spirituality is my heart, my soul, and my work. But I'm also a carnivore. That's right. I eat only meat. No vegetables, no fruits, and I drink only water. No diet soda, no juice, nothing. Eat meat, drink water, add some salt. And this way of eating, this lifestyle, has transformed my life in deep and abiding ways. And you're going to learn a lot through this journey. Some of you have probably heard of carnivore. Some of you maybe experienced carnivores. Some of you are just saying, wow, it's a rabbi talking about food. That could be interesting. But it's much, much bigger than just food. In fact, this really is not a diet program or station or channel at all. It's about transformation. It's about the deep connection between food and spirituality and how what we eat can reshape and transform the way we live. How we've all lost track of what is truly good for us, what nourishes us, what strengthens us, what can transform us. And I'm telling you, what you eat can shape who you are, and my journey illustrates that in a profound and meaningful way. And I want to share that with you and share some of the inspiration that has guided me so that I can be your guide in your own transformation. Let me tell you a little bit about my story. For as long as I can remember, I had a stomach ache. I can remember back in middle school, always had a stomach ache. Gas too bad, bloating, and I just kind of learned to live with it. Doctors might recommend the Mediterranean diet at some point, and that didn't help. And nutritionists would say, keep a food journal. That didn't help. Probiotics were expensive, but they didn't help. I figured by the time I was in my mid to late 30s, I figured, you know what? I'm just going to be one of the 20% of Americans, something like 50 million Americans, who just have a chronic pain. And I figured I can just live with it. Life goes on. But then my daughter was diagnosed with celiac. That's where you cannot eat any gluten. And we had to totally modify and rethink what we did in our house. And it opened my eyes up to the power of diet, to the power of how what we eat is not just about our appearance or even about our physical health. It shapes our mental health, our mood, our outlook. This journey opened my eyes, really caring for her, shaping the home that she would grow up in. And this was right around the time when the keto diet was becoming popular. The keto diet is where you don't eat more than about 20 carbs a day. Now, there are variations on it, but it's extremely low carb. And the idea is you get into ketosis, which is where your brain is operating based on ketones, which are produced by fat and often fasting, rather than glucose, which is from carbs. Keto diet was becoming popular, and a writer, a YouTuber, a blogger I really look up to named Michael Hyatt was trying keto. And I thought Michael Hyatt had great judgment. I loved his books. So I said, you know what? I'll give it a try. It also basically cuts out gluten as well. So even though I didn't have celiac like my daughter, I figured I'd probably have some sort of sensitivity given that there are genetic components. So I gave keto a try. And it worked beautifully. My congregants noticed. And it was truly a transformative moment. But then I realized something. My stomach still hurt. And I still felt addicted to sweets. But instead of the regular sweets, I was enjoying keto sweets. And instead of drinking 1 or 2 Cokes, I was drinking 5 or 6 Diet Cokes. So the sweetness addiction was still there. The stomach aches were still there. And I was falling off the wagon here and there. It's quite easy when there are so many different keto treats. You can figure, oh, well, I can try. Maybe an extra 5 carbs isn't going to hurt. And I didn't really appreciate keeping track of all the carbs as well. It felt onerous. I have enough on my mind with my job and my work. This was not something I wanted to keep track of. So while keto was wonderful, it didn't affect my mental health, my spirituality, my mood even. And a doctor that I was seeing here in Chicago, I actually saw him do a discussion on carnivore. And this was the first time I'd ever heard of carnivore. It had also been called zero carb, but he referred to it as carnivore. And that was almost an extreme version of keto, where instead of just keeping carbs below 20 grams a day, you ate only meat. And essentially, your carbs were zero. Now, even meat has some carbs on it, so basically it's 5 carbs or less. But it's all meat. No sweeteners, no artificial sweeteners, nothing. Meat only. Sounds a little crazy, doesn't it? It does. And it sounded, my dad, who's a doctor, was not thrilled when I said I wanted to try carnivore. But then I thought back to my grandpa, who was also a doctor and loved steak, so I figured he might get a kick out of it. And I also learned something about myself. You know, there is a concept that people can be moderators or extremists. Moderators can handle moderation in everything. They're naturally not drawn to one extreme to the other. I'm not a moderator. You can ask my wife. When I get into something, I get into it big time. So giving some clear guidelines around carnivore could be a more effective approach than just keto. And I figured, okay, I'll give it a try for 30 days, see how it works. Within a couple of weeks, my skin had cleared up. I barely noticed there was a problem, but suddenly people are commenting that my skin looks better than it ever has. And my mood is better, significantly better. I start listening to classical music again. I'd always loved classical music, but I don't know, I just hadn't listened to it in a while. I felt a yearning for it. I don't know if my brain was more relaxed, but I wanted to listen to classical music again. I started lifting weights again. Within 2 weeks of going on carnivore, perhaps it was an excess of energy, but I wanted to start lifting weights again. I hadn't in about 10 years. So I hadn't had a trainer or really gone to the gym to lift in 10 years. Wanted to start doing that again. Wanted to do yoga. I had never done yoga before. In fact, while I had one time in college on a retreat, I felt forced to. I wanted to do yoga. Suddenly, there was an excess of energy, an openness of spirit that I had not experienced. And I know this may sound outrageous, especially to my more rational listeners, people that sometimes have a hard time believing out of the box stories. I'm one of those. But this is honestly what happened. It was transformative and quickly. It didn't take much time before I suddenly felt energized, but also calm, focused, relaxed, but driven. I've always been a writer. My output, I used to try to get 500 words in a day. After going on carnivore, I was getting in 1,000 words a day without a problem. It was transformative. And I wanted to know why. We live in such a tense world. And if we can find ways that we can control, that we can cultivate, where we can create a sense of calm and peace and low stress and low anxiety, one in which what happens around us doesn't affect deeply what's inside of us, that's a gift. That's something we all need. And I found that in carnivore. You don't have to, and I'm not saying this has to be the right path for you. But what does need to happen is I do think we need to examine what we eat and how we process and are mindful of what we eat. It doesn't have to be carnivore, although I think there are unique aspects of carnivore that work best for me and for many people. But that's beside the point. What is the point is this transformation of how you can go from anxious, stressed, to calm, peaceful, focused. And you can see it. One of the things I noticed when I first started exploring carnivore was a lot of the teachers, a lot of the YouTube presenters, like Dr. Chafee, who you'll learn about, were very calm and relaxed and knowledgeable. They didn't get ruffled by difficult questions. They didn't get angry when challenged. And I felt that same kind of perspective through carnivore. I know it sounds kind of outrageous. When we think of carnivore, we think of an apex predator, aggression. In some ways, it has the opposite effect. And that's why I called this channel Zen Carnivore. Zen is right thinking, right words, right action, a sense of integrity, wholeness. In some ways, like the Hebrew word shalom, which is at the center of my rabbinate. Peace and right relationship. Peace within, right relationship with those without. That's what carnivore has given me. That's how it has transformed my life. And I'm going to share that journey with you. And it won't just be me. You'll also meet some outstanding carnivore leaders, teachers, thinkers, researchers, doctors along this journey. So tune in. This is a journey, not just my journey, but your journey. And I hope I can be a guide with you on the way.